Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very well known author of Indian origin from Istanbul, Turkey, Anne De Silva. And welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. I'm truly honored to be on your show.
Thank you. Anne is a best-selling author. She's involved with cultural inclusion and diversity, and she speaks on them. She's a woman-empowered talk show host when she talks about, and her show is called Anne Talks Woman Enough. And she's a humanitarian CSR initiative, which is called India Heart. She's a global goodwill ambassador. And amongst many of her awards, she was awarded the Women's Leader for 2021. So, Anne, I'm so delighted to have you on my show. Let's start talking about your book, Sand and Sea and Child of Two Worlds. Tell me about both your books.
This is Sand and Sea, Footprints in the Sand, the current bestseller.
Uh-huh.
And this is the second book, which is Child of Two Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And since I live in Turkey, I should say them in Turkish as well. So Sand and Sea is called Kumbe Deniz.
Uh-huh.
And Footprints in the Sand is Kumdaki Ayak Izleri.
Okay.
And that's the first book.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is Child of Two Worlds, which is Iki Dünyada Çocuk.
Mm-hmm.
So my book actually, I actually created a niche for myself as a travel writer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I left the corporate world, that's something I wanted to pursue, my CSR, making a difference in the world with my voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I love writing, both poetry and prose. So that's how my journey started.
Mm-hmm.
I am very intrigued by old cultures. Coming from India, that's a very normal one for us. We are a very old culture and society. But I also am very intrigued by the history of Turkey, you know. Turkey as a country, various locations, the Ottomans,
Correct.
the rule of the Byzantines, the land talks to me. And, when the poet in me comes out, there's no controlling that.
Wow.
So this book was basically a trilogy about respect to nature and that everything comes from nature. And every time mankind disrespects nature, nature reforms mankind. And then the whole concept of love, where does it come? That is also witnessed in nature because the sand and sea can never be separated. So that's the analogy of true love can never be separated. And how true love calls out to people. Because our human body is made of sand and sea. I mean, we've got water in us and we are solid as well, So the coarseness of ego is the sand, and the moisture, the mother in everybody, the feminine in everybody is the sea. And, so this whole journey of soulmates between India and Turkey, and of course, it has reaped its rewards by making the relationship between India and Turkey much better.
Absolutely.
It's been awarded the Peace Prize awards also, because it talks about, today we are in an educated society, but we're deprived of expression of speech. We are trolled if we say we choose something. But the truth of us today is that education has to open our minds to respect individual choices, whether it's spiritual choices or it's orientations or it is, a location preference. People don't have to take it personally. They have to understand that the individual matters. And so this whole soul journey of this individual woman, not looking for the knight in shining armor, but the woman of today to pursue her dreams, to fight for them, to go and get them, and not to forget that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, So this whole spirituality of the single universe where everybody is one is what this trilogy is about.
Wow.
The first one is the whole soulmate quest. And the second one is about something amazing that Turkey did, which we saw in our lives, which was the Syrian war. And this Iki Dünyada Çocuk is the Syrian refugee child. who gets rehabilitated, and she is the sole child of somebody. Because if there is an orphan somewhere, there is some sole parent looking for that child.
Oh, nice.
All we need is to have a place in our heart to give that love.
Amazing. And given the fact that you've been in Turkey for all of 3 years, you are speaking Turkish very fluently. Well done.
Thank
Congratulations.
You.
So also tell me a little bit about your poetry, because when I was reading about you, this aspect didn't come out.
Yes. Actually, my publisher also told me it's going to be a grand failure because, people are so used to doing things in a structured manner. When you come with the out of the box thinking, it's usually shot down.
Correct.
So they said that, poetry with prose will never fly. But contrary to that, all my readers have loved the poems between the protagonist, between the sand and the sea when they talk about their love, between the child and the woman, so they have loved the, in-depth expression of love through poetry,
Amazing.
And so poetry became a success in a prose book, which was not what the publishers thought.
Fantastic. Yeah. And tell me a little bit about, when did you start writing?
Now, that's a good one. You see, my family has always held that one against me till I became an author, because I've been writing since I was a child. But I used to not write prose. I used to write poetry since the age of 6, 7. Talking in rhyme was something they mocked me as a kid, saying she makes everything rhythmic, So poetry was very natural for me. I think, deep down, my soul is an old soul, and it connects to the rhythms of the universe,
Okay.
So I used to love to talk like that, the rhyming and everything else. And I always kept a journal. So I have poems that go back to my, young age of 6, 7, when I was very naive, very innocent, looked at the world very differently to the woman that I've become today. So yes, I always did that. But, life happens to all of us after we finish our education. Everyone's in the rat race, the 9 to 5. And then, you have to muster the courage to say, because we live in a beautiful time that gives us the option to move away from structured to unstructured, from learning to unlearning. And that's a spiritual journey, and another conversation for another time.
Absolutely.
But, I took that journey. Yeah.
Fantastic. And my next question, Anne, is for all our young viewers and listeners. What makes one a good writer?
Authenticity, vulnerability, and bravery. Because most of the time when you're writing to impress somebody. You're writing to be the best in that genre. You're writing to send a very powerful message, even though deep inside you feel wounded and you damaged, and those things hurt you. And you don't want to share it with the world because they're going to judge you. They're going to put you in a box and say, oh, that's like a broken vase. But, broken vases are pieces of art. The day you muster the strength to be authentic to whoever you are, whatever your journey was, because we never chose our families. We were placed by the universe in our families. Life happened to us when we were kids. Damages have happened to children when they were young. Like, for example, the story of an orphan. No orphan would want to be an orphan, but that's the destiny they were given. When you show your vulnerability, when you show your, wound, the reader instantly knows it is authentic. And that's when the tears come. That's when the connection comes. And that's when people say that, this book touched my heart, So as an author, people have to realize, if you're walking that path, you've got to be brave. You've got to be authentic and vulnerable.
I agree with you. And I've always said this, anybody who's an author, I have a lot of respect for, because they're willing to put their deepest thoughts out in the open and be willing to accept brickbats and, of course, lots of love as well.
Yes. But you see, the brickbats are immaterial.
Correct.
Because it's also coming, whenever I get a brickbat from somebody or a troll saying something nasty, I feel empathy because that's a hurting person. They don't want to accept that wound is also theirs. So they're hitting out. But truly, it has touched them too.
Correct.
But they just don't want to say that. They want to show the persona that I'm strong and this is rubbish and what is this vulnerability and what is these journeys. But deep down, it has touched them. So I really love these trolls and negative comment
Well
people.
said. Well said.
Because they show me the light in them.
Well said. Well said. And one more question regarding writing, and then I'll move to the next segment.
Yes.
Do you have a specific work schedule when you write, or when you are in the frame of writing, then you just write?
I'm a flow person. I'm a totally flow person. Like in my book, I've written about various cities. And I wrote about the cities after I traveled in Turkey to those cities. It's like I connected with the land, the history, because you see, I believe that we all are spirit. And, people who've lived hundreds of years before us, they have left their happiness when they have gone, and they've also left their sorrow. So you can feel that in the land, and I feel a story needs to lead the author there. It needs to unveil itself. I'm getting goosebumps saying that, but it needs to speak to you. Nature wants you to be the listener. And when you listen, you learn.
Very nice. So, and I'm going to move to your other avatar, which is as a cultural inclusion and diversity speaker.
Yeah.
First, tell me, why is it that DEI has become so important and so relevant today?
It is extremely imperative in today's times, because today's times brag about degrees and diplomas and PhDs and what they so call themselves the educated era. But they're completely illiterate. They judge people by their color. They judge people by the way they speak a language. They judge people from their past of poverty to richness, and they're very harsh. So there's this clanism that has started happening in the world. If you are Hindu, you are here. If you're Muslim, you are here. If you're Catholic, you are here. If you're Indian, then all Indians are with you. And if you're American, then all Americans are with you. If you are Harvards, you are in that bracket. If you're vernacular educated, then you're in that bracket. So we are actually more backward than the so-called illiterate people of the earlier times. They were more open to inclusion. They were more open and brave to new experiences. So it's time to tell people that all these designations really don't matter. COVID was that wake up, Even if you were a PhD from Harvard, you still died of COVID if it happened to you. So how did your designation or your degree save you?
Correct.
But being a human being, you would have had somebody who was black holding your hand in your last moments, and you hated black people all your life. So, we are in a time where we have to start saying, change the narrative, You really have to change the narrative. Stop the congratulations and let's start the conversation.
Well
because when we start the conversation, then we will start doing what we are conversing. Congratulations is very far away.
So, as a speaker on this topic so extensively, how can we remove biases in our society and our businesses? Because you define it so well. I mean, religion, or if you're an Indian or an American, or if you're from Harvard or whatever, and you're so right that these little, groups or groupisms start to happen. But how do we remove biases in, starting from the time we are children?
So this is where it goes back to nature and it goes back to birth. Birth is the place of unlearning, coming into a scary place of learning. And that responsibility of teaching comes on the onus of parents and society and the ecosystem. So till we do not tell in families that your responsibility, I would say the government should give a eligibility certificate to have a child.
Okay.
Because you're going to ruin the future if you do not give the right training in the foundation. Look at a garden. The gardener is not biased to any of the plants that is in the garden. He gives the right nourishment. That is what the family has to give. You have to stop saying it's a girl, so she can't do this. It's a boy, he can do this. She's black. I don't know if we'll find her a groom. or she's too gutsy and she speaks too much, so the husband will not like her. Because when these regressive thoughts are inculcated into a person, it takes you 10 years first to unlearn all of this. That is garbage. It's total garbage.
Yeah.
Then it has to come in the curriculum of the school to teach empathy, to teach listening, to teach care, to teach unity. These are, remove the chemistry and biology and physics and start putting this in the curriculum.
So true.
And then 20 years later, we will see the result of a different garden growing, totally different one.
Very, very interested. And when you speak to companies or when you speak in your capacity as a global goodwill ambassador,
yes,
what are some of your learnings when you talk about these topics in front of educated audiences?
So I've always said two things. I've said, having worked for over 2.5 decades, I have to be honest and say that I have felt that the men were more encouraging than the women. So when they keep doing this woman fighting, woman inclusion, woman empowerment, I say, hello, stop there. Because it was the women pulling the women down, firstly. It was the men encouraging the women. You would always find the daddy, the easier one, and the mummy, the one saying that if you didn't cook, you're going to have this problem. So within our own gender, we have to do a correction first. Because perpetrators, like terrorists, is a different breed, They're bad for any gender. They're bad for any country, and they're bad for any reputation of any religion.
Correct.
We're talking about these biases. I say that one should not be looked at as male or female because one's talent has to be looked at in the corporate world. Can she deliver?
Correct.
And if she can deliver, it's not because she is drop dead gorgeous, because that's a demeaning statement.
Correct.
It is her talent that has delivered.
True.
The package was the gift from God and your genes. So don't get confused with the gender. It's the genes and the talent.
Well said. Well said. What a great answer. So my next question to you, Anne, is how does culture impact inclusion?
Oh, greatly. I mean, the India of 100 years ago, where Atiti Deva Bhava brought the whole universe to India. And today, the India, which is fighting on religion, is two different Indians. Okay, two different Indias. The India I grew up in, I didn't know who the Sikh was, or who the Hindu was, or who the Muslim was, or who the Catholic was. Everything was celebrated in the 70s and 80s.
Correct.
And the Chacha was the Chacha. He could be Christian Chacha, Hindu Chacha, and it didn't matter. He was just Chacha. The world culturally was great in India. And the world culturally in other countries was also great. What has gone is the humanity, the empathy. What has come in is commercialism, where the focus is not on your dreams, but what is going to generate more eyeball shots, sales, and what is going to put me ahead of others. If I have to stamp on them, I will stamp and I will go. It is forgetting the beauty of what we came from and becoming the ugliness we hated.
Well said. Well said. So my next question on inclusion is that, this is now the age when millennials, Gen Zs, they're now getting into leadership roles across the world. What are your views on how are they changing the entire topic of us, understanding of inclusion?
I think some of the leaders are doing a phenomenal job. It's like some of the prime ministers and presidents also doing a phenomenal job, where they understand that that role makes them belong to the whole world, that whole country, that whole company. And when they understand that they are the father, the patriarch or the matriarch, everybody is included. It's like a dinner table. Is that dinner table for family? Then everybody will be fed. If it's that dinner table for a party, then your favorites are given food.
Yes.
It's simple.
Well said. Yes.
Just
well said.
if you just make it simple in the head, as long as we stay as a family, We are one world, one people, one country. And that's why I always in my poetry write that India is not a border. India is a spirit. The most powerful statement of India is Atithi Deva Bhava. To be able to put your guest as you were to welcome God to your house, that gives me goosebumps when I think about it.
Well said. Well said. So, and I've got time for 3 or 4 questions for you personally now.
Yes,
because my viewers and listeners love to get to know my guest a little better.
Yes.
My first question to you is that, you said you were in the corporate world, you have written poetry since the time you were 5 or 6. You've got such a vast repertoire of different interests that you seem to be doing, and you moved to Turkey. Yes. What would you say are 3 key milestones or pivot points in your life or your career?
So the first one was vulnerability. Okay, being raised in 80s, beginnings of 90s, when I passed out from college and stuff. Women were told that in the corporate world, man is preferred to a woman because women cry, women show their emotions, they get pregnant, they have this, they have that. So dealing with that whole vulnerability and trying to be in a persona was a pivotal thing for me to overcome, I feel. And it took time. But I also had great and fabulous mentors. I have to give the credit to them. Sometimes you're blessed with a beautiful ecosystem in the corporate world. That was one. The second was the strength to be able to be authentic to myself again. So I never took jobs that offered me a great pay scale. The pay scale came. It was never the focus. I was always driven by the creative work I was doing. The project I was. So that was one pivotal point for me to always choose what drives me, professionally. And I was great at marketing and strategic alliances because I've realized I'm a peacemaker. So that's why both parties are always happy with me. So my bosses were great to put me in strategic alliances. I always achieved that well.
Right.
So yes, that's the second one.
Okay.
And the third one was the time to realize when to step out.
Okay.
Now that's a very difficult one. When every month you're getting a huge paycheck coming into your bank balance as a credit, not a debit. To be able to come to a point to introspect when is enough.
Amazing. Very well said. And I don't think there would be too many people who will be able to just give up a fat paycheck and say enough is enough. I want to follow my passion. I want to follow my heart. True. So I've got time for 2 more questions. The next question to you, Anne, is that in a life so well lived, as you look back, what does success mean to Anne?
Just being true to myself. Just being Anne. The beautiful movie of Harry Potter, where J.K. Rowling gave this special dialogue to him. I'm just Harry. I'm just Anne.
Okay.
I think that's success.
Wonderful. And my last question to you, and this is a question on failure. And the reason I am asking, I ask this from many of my guests is because I've often said that parents in India don't teach children it's okay to fail. We're always told come first in class, go to head of the line, and that manifests itself in our behavior patterns.
Of course.
My question to you, Anne, is what have been your learnings from your mistakes?
Oh my God, I have just gratitude that they happened. Because if they did not happen to me, I would not be on this path.
Okay.
Firstly, I think failure is the greatest blessing to a person. In that moment, you never see it. Why? Because you are surrounded by other emotions like disappointment in yourself. Self-esteem gets affected because somebody else has been victorious and you haven't. And you start focusing on all the things which failure is not supposed to bring. Failure is supposed to bring an alert from the universe to tell you that this is not your path. It's like, I'll give you a small story if you may allow me to tell you.
Sure.
Okay. This story is, of course, fictional.
Mm-hmm.
There was a man who was in love with a Maruti 800.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a great believer. And he prayed all the time to God. And he said that I want to go and meet God. So the angels organized this meeting for him to go and meet God. And he was so excited, he couldn't even sleep. He didn't sleep. He landed up on time. And God asked him, why don't you enjoy all the fruits that are here and, enjoy the breakfast and we can talk. And he said, no, let's come to the point. I want my Maruti 800 and the red one, by the way. And I've prayed and I've done everything possible for this. So I really want it. So God said, I don't think this is right for you. And he said, no, you're God. You're supposed to give everything a person asks for. So give it to me. So God said, I'm going to ask you 3 times. Are you sure? He said, yes, I am. He said, are you sure? He said, yes, I am. And he asked him 3rd time, are you sure? And he said, of course, I am. So God said, okay, give it to him. Let him be happy. So while he was driving out of God's palace, again, this is fictional, driving out of God's palace, he saw this trailer that was driving into the runway towards the palace, which had a Lamborghini, it had a Mercedes-Benz, it had, all the fancy names like Audi and etc. And he was wondering, which man asked for this? So he turns around and comes back to God and he says to God, I'm sorry to take another minute.
No, that's okay.
But can you tell me, who is this for? He said, oh, that was for you. So when there is a failure and there is a closed door, there is something bigger waiting for you.
What a great story. And on that note, I mean, I just love the story of the Maruti 800 and the Lamborghini, but and your very, very wise words of there is something better waiting for you behind any door. Yes. I want to say thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for speaking to me about your amazing books, and I'm certainly going to look out for the trilogy. I'm sure it's available on Amazon, and I'm going to ask all our viewers and listeners to go and check it out. Look for Anne De Silva as the author, and I'm sure all the books will pop up. Thank you for speaking to me on inclusion, and I'm grateful for your incredible thoughts on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And thank you again for talking to me in such detail about your own personal journey. Thank you and good luck.
And I want to say thank you to you, because I think you're making a great difference in this world. I would call you a light bearer. You are taking light to many people, and at some level, it will touch somebody's heart.
Well said.
So the service that you are doing is priceless. Thank you so much, Ashish.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.